The mysterious encounter, the barren planet of Korath, was a place few dared to explore. Its surface was cracked, and the wind carried a haunting, dry hum through the desolate canyons. There were no signs of life, no thriving ecosystems only. The dust of ancient ruins scattered across the land. Yet for the human explorer, it was his job to search the stars and chart the unknown. He had been on this planet for days, trying to collect samples, but something felt different this time. There was a strange pull, an undeniable force calling him deeper into the planet's heart. The explorer, named Alex, was alone. His small shuttle rested in a nearby canyon, its engines silent in the eerie stillness of the planet. His helmet reflected the distant sun, casting a dull glow across his worn face. His mission was simple: survey the planet, take what data he could, and return to the safety of the fleet. But something about Korath felt alive, something beneath the surface. He trudged through the rocky terrain, each step kicking up clouds of dust as his boots crunched over the dry soil. His sensors beeped sporadically, picking up something faint and unusual energy source. It wasn't typical for the planet, and it wasn't marked on any of the data maps. His curiosity piqued. Alex adjusted his backpack and followed the signal. The wind picked up, whipping his face with sand and grit as he pressed forward, the signal growing stronger with every step. After what felt like hours, he reached a small, jagged cliff. It wasn't high, but it led into a shadowed crevice. As he peered into the dark passageway, a faint glow caught his eye. There, beneath the overhang of jagged rocks, he saw a figure dotted. It was small at first glance, hunched over, with long ears and fur-like skin. Alex froze. It looked like nothing he had ever seen before. He quickly activated his scanner, but the readings were inconsistent. It was alive, very much alive, but beyond that, his equipment couldn't give him any answers. His heart raced with a mix of excitement and fear. Was this the life he had been seeking on Korath? The figure shifted, and Alex's breath caught. In his throat. It was an alien, no doubt about it. But there was something different about her. Her fur shimmered with an ethereal glow, and her body was sleek and feline, like a cat but with something more, something powerful. She raised her head slowly, her large golden eyes locking onto Alex's. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Alex stood frozen, staring into her eyes. They seemed to pull at something deep inside him, a feeling he couldn't quite place like. A magnetic force pulling him closer. The alien's gaze softened, and a low, almost imperceptible purr vibrated from her chest. Her ears flicked back and forth, as though listening for something, before she let out a soft, almost human-like sigh. Instinctively, Alex took a step forward. The alien didn't back away. Instead, she straightened, rising from the ground to stand before him. Her fur was a mix of deep blues and purples, shimmering under the harsh light of the planet's sun. She was smaller than most humans, but she radiated an energy that made Alex feel strangely vulnerable. What are you? Alex whispered, though he knew it wouldn't answer. His voice sounded too loud in the silence that surrounded them. The alien tilted her head, her eyes narrowing as if considering his words. She stepped closer, and Alex instinctively took a step back, but his gaze never left her. He wanted to turn away fear, gnawed at the edges of his thoughts, but something inside him wouldn't let him. She moved again, this time closer still, her eyes never leaving his. As she approached, her scent reached Alex something sweet yet earthy, like rain on a summer evening. He inhaled deeply, trying to shake off the strange feeling of calm that flooded him. Reaching out a hand, the alien hesitated for a split second, then gently placed it on his shoulder. A soft spark of energy coursed through Alex's body at the touch, a sudden rush that made him feel dizzy. His heart pounded faster, his mind swirling with confusion. He stumbled back, but her hand remained steady on him, as if anchoring him to the moment. With her touch, he felt something he couldn't explain, an overwhelming connection, like he was bound to her in some strange way. His pulse quickened, but he couldn't bring himself to pull away. The moment stretched on, the air heavy with unspoken understanding. Then the alien made a soft noise, a sound that vibrated in his chest like a purr, but much deeper, more resonant. Alex felt it, all the way to his bones. Her eyes softened, and she tilted her head again, a sign that perhaps she understood him, or at least something about him. It was then that Alex understood this was no ordinary encounter. This alien, this cat-like woman, was no mere curiosity. She was a part of something far bigger, something that called to him in ways he didn't yet understand. And as she locked her gaze with his once more, Alex realized that his mission on Korath had just changed completely. He wasn't here to collect samples anymore. He was here for something else, something he wasn't ready to admit yet. The aliens. Eyes glowed brighter as she stepped back, watching him carefully. She then took a step towards him, her movements graceful, feline, as she lowered her head in a gesture Alex could only describe as an invitation. Without thinking, Alex extended his hand towards her, and as their hands touched, something inside him shifted. This was just the beginning. Unexpected connection. The days that followed were filled with confusion and wonder. The alien cat woman, whom Alex had come to call Lyra after the constellation he had once studied, remained by his side. She seemed to understand him in ways he couldn't explain. There was an undeniable connection between them, one that made the air feel charged whenever they were near. But the more Alex tried to ignore it, the stronger it became. Lyra had never spoken a word, but her eyes told him everything. They spoke of ancient wisdom, of memories long forgotten, and a deep sadness. Her purring seemed to echo in the silence of the planet, and each time it reverberated through the air, Alex felt it deep in his chest, like it was calling him to remember something. The bond between them began to feel almost physical. It was as if every glance, every touch, tethered them closer, pulling them into a web of fate neither could escape. The warmth from her presence lingered even when she wasn't close by. When Alex woke in the mornings, he could still feel the soft hum of her energy, an almost invisible thread tying them together. It wasn't just a bond, it was a force. One afternoon, while Alex was sorting through some old equipment he had scavenged from the shipwrecks around the planet, Lyra approached him quietly, her fur rippling with a strange light. She watched him for a long time, her golden eyes studying him with an intensity that made him feel as if she were peeling away his thoughts, layer by layer. Then, without warning, she stepped closer, her small, lithe body brushing against his arm as she sat beside him. Alex tensed, instinctively trying to pull away, but there was something in the air, something heavy, that kept him from moving. Lyra's presence was grounding, yet it also made his heart race in a way that felt entirely out of place. She nudged his hand with her head, a soft, feline gesture. He hesitated, unsure what to do, but the warmth of her touch seemed to make his fears fade away. Slowly, he extended his hand, brushing it across her fur. It was soft, like velvet, but there was an undeniable strength beneath the surface. As he ran his fingers through her fur, Lyra closed her eyes, letting out a deep purr. Her body hummed with energy, a low vibration that shook the very ground beneath them. A strange sensation washed over Alex. His heart began to beat faster, but it wasn't from fear or anxiety. It was as though something inside him was awakening, something buried deep within his soul. He pulled his hand back for a moment, startled by the sudden surge of emotion. Lyra opened her eyes, her gaze softening as she locked eyes with him once. Again, this time there was no fear in her expression, no wariness, It was almost comforting. Why do you do this? Alex found himself asking, his voice barely above a whisper. He wasn't sure if she could understand him, but somehow he felt that she did. She tilted her head slightly, her ears twitching in response. Then, without any warning, she nudged his chest with her head again, harder this time, as if asking him to understand something. Alex's breath caught in his throat. There was something about her gesture, something urgent, almost pleading. He felt the same overwhelming pull as before, but this time it wasn't just curiosity. It was something deeper, a connection that felt like it had always been there, waiting to be unlocked. He closed his eyes for a moment, trying to clear his mind, but when he opened them, he saw her in a new light. This wasn't just an alien creature, this was something more. Something ancient, something powerful. He felt it now, in every nerve of his body. Lyra's eyes glowed faintly, her pupils expanding as if she were preparing to share something with him. As her gaze intensified, Alex felt a rush of thoughts and emotions flood his mind, not his own, but hers. It was like stepping into her very essence, experiencing her memories. He saw flashes, flickers of a vast, starry sky, cities made of crystal and light, and a world teeming with life. He saw battles fought and lost, civilizations built and destroyed, and a loneliness that stretched across millennia. With every passing second, the images grew clearer, the emotions stronger. He felt her pain, her sorrow, and the weight of time. He felt the fear that came with being hunted by her own kind, the fear of being alone, abandoned in a strange universe. And then he felt it, the bond. Alex staggered back, clutching his head, overwhelmed by the flood of sensations. The images faded as quickly as they came, leaving him breathless and disoriented. Lyra's purring was soft, almost like a lullaby. As she rubbed against him again, a soothing presence. She didn't need words to tell him what she wanted. The connection between them was undeniable. She had chosen him. And somehow, he knew that his life had changed forever. Alex stared at her, unable to find the words. His thoughts raced, but everything seemed to be falling into place, as if this moment was predestined. He wasn't just her savior. He was something more, something that even his mind couldn't fully comprehend yet. Lyra's golden eyes met his once more. There was no need for more words between them. He could feel it, the promise of something ancient, something unbreakable. And with that, Alex understood. Whatever this bond was, it was just the beginning. The power of the bond. The days following Alex's strange vision were unsettling. He couldn't shake the images from his mind, the ancient cities, the battles, the overwhelming loneliness that Lyra had shared with him. It was as if they had been intertwined in some cosmic dance, and now the universe had nudged them together. Despite the weight of this newfound knowledge, Alex couldn't ignore the pull between them. The bond, undeniable and growing stronger, by the hour, tied him to the alien cat woman in a way that transcended reason. The desert planet, Korath, now felt less empty. Despite the stillness around them, Alex couldn't help but feel that they weren't alone anymore. Lyra, once a mysterious and seemingly feral creature, had become a presence he couldn't escape, though he didn't want to. In fact, it felt wrong to separate from her. They began to spend most of their time together. Lyra's purring never stopped, and her presence was comforting. But Alex was starting to notice strange things happening whenever she was near. At first, he thought it was just his mind playing tricks on him. But one night, as the two of them sat under the shadow of a canyon wall, it became undeniable. Lyra was gazing at the distant sky, her head tilted as if listening to something beyond the stars. Alex felt an odd chill crawl up his spine, and the ground beneath them seemed to hum. It was subtle at first, a faint vibration, but as it grew stronger, the rocks around them began to shift. The ground cracked, and Alex stumbled back in surprise, his heart pounding in his chest. "What's happening?" he gasped, his voice barely a whisper. Lyra's gaze turned to him, her golden eyes flashing in the darkness. She stood up, her feline movements graceful, her ears twitching with the faintest of sounds. A low, resonating growl echoed from her chest, but it wasn't a sound of aggression. It was a sound of power, of strength long kept dormant. The air around them seemed to thicken, as though reality itself was bending not suddenly. A surge of energy erupted from Lyra's body. Alex watched in awe as her fur began to glow, a radiant light radiating from her like an ethereal fire. The ground shook beneath them, and the wind picked up, whipping around in violent gusts. It was as if the planet itself was responding to Lyra's power. Alex took a cautious step forward, but Lyra held out a hand, stopping him. "Lyra?" he called, his voice thick with awe and fear. He wasn't sure what was happening, but he felt that everything had just shifted. Lyra's eyes locked with his, and this time she didn't need to speak. A connection between them was stronger than ever before. The hum in the air was no longer just around them. It was within them, an invisible force binding their souls. Alex felt a warmth flood through him, the same warmth he had felt the first moment they had touched. But this time it was more intense, more complete. For a brief moment, the chaos around them seemed to still. Lyra took a few steps closer to him, her power flickering like a flame caught in the wind. She lifted her hand and for the first time touched his chest with the gentleness of a lover. Alex felt it. This power, this connection was not just physical. It was deeper than that. Her touch was soothing and overwhelming, yet it left him feeling strangely calm. He could feel her energy flowing into him, and in turn, something began to awaken inside himself. There was a spark, a kind of latent strength in him that had never existed before. It wasn't just Lyra's power. This was his too. "Are you giving me your strength?" Alex whispered, staring into her glowing eyes. Lyra nodded once, slowly. A soft, gentle purr rumbled through her chest. But it wasn't just a sound, it was a vibration that seemed to ripple through the air, through his very bones. As the hum intensified, Alex realized something incredible. The bond they shared wasn't one-sided, it was symbiotic. Her power was now his, and his life force was hers. They had become one in a way that no human and alien ever had before. But just as quickly as the power had surged, it began to dissipate, the ground's tremor calming to a soft hum once again. Lyra lowered her hand, the glow in her fur slowly fading back into the night. Alex's heart still raced, his mind trying to process the magnitude of what had just happened. What did I just feel?" he asked, his voice shaky. Lyra stepped back, her eyes still glowing faintly as she studied him. She seemed satisfied with the connection they had just shared. Her body language was calm, almost regal, as if she knew exactly what had just transpired. Alex could feel her, even though she wasn't speaking. It was as if the bond had unlocked something in him, something primal. Without speaking, Lyra turned and began walking towards the horizon, her tail swishing gently behind her. She glanced over her shoulder, waiting for Alex to follow. He didn't need any more explanation. He knew. They were no longer just a human and an alien. They were a force together. He followed her without a second thought, the bond between them pulling him forward. What would come next? He didn't know, but whatever it was, he was ready. The alien world's response. The days that followed felt like a dream, a slow unraveling of reality as Alex and Lyra traversed the desolate expanse of Korath. The planet, once so empty and lifeless, now seemed to hum with a new energy. The connection between them deepened with each passing hour. Lyra's presence, once mysterious and silent, was now a constant, her gaze always watching him, her energy always lingering nearby. Alex felt it everywhere, her warmth, her power, and an undeniable pull that anchored him to her dot. It was strange, yet comforting, but as the days passed, a quiet unease began to settle in the back of Alex's mind. He couldn't shake the feeling that their bond wasn't just something personal. It was something that others would notice. And those others might not be as welcoming as he hoped. The sun sank behind the jagged horizon one evening as they camped in a shallow canyon. Lyra, curled up beside him, rested her head on his lap, her fur glowing faintly in the dim light. Her purring vibrated against his chest, a sound that had become so familiar it felt like home. But Alex's mind was elsewhere. He couldn't help but remember the way her body had surged with power, how the ground had trembled beneath them. That wasn't just some strange outburst. No, that was a display of power, something ancient, something that couldn't go unnoticed. And sure enough, as the stars blinked into existence overhead, Alex felt it, the unmistakable hum of energy, distant but rapidly approaching. His pulse quickened, and he sat up suddenly, his hand instinctively reaching for his sidearm. But it wasn't just the sound of movement that alerted him. It was the way the air seemed to thicken, as though the planet itself was holding its breath. Lyra stirred beside him, her ears pricking up. She didn't move from her resting spot, but her golden eyes narrowed, and a low growl rumbled in her chest. Alex's breath hitched in his throat as a strange, instinctual knowing washed over him. They were being watched. But it wasn't just an observer. They were surrounded. A moment later, a first figure appeared on the edge of the canyon. At first, Alex thought it was just a shadow, the glow of the distant stars playing tricks on his eyes. But then, more. Shapes emerged, slowly materializing out of the darkness like ghostly specters. They were tall, imposing beings, cloaked in shimmering armor that reflected the light of the stars. Their faces were obscured, but the outlines of their features were unmistakable alien, but clearly not of the same species as Lyra. He heard a voice, cold and commanding, echoing across the canyon. "She is not meant for you, human." Alex's heart pounded in his chest, his grip tightening around the weapon at his side. He glanced down at Lyra, but she didn't move. Her eyes were locked onto the figures, her body tense but unmoving. It was clear she recognized them, and whatever they weren't friends. "Leave now," the voice came again, sharper this time. "The bond you share is an abomination. She is ours to command, not yours to claim." Alex stood up slowly, his mind racing. He was outnumbered and outmatched. The figures before him were clearly advanced, their armor glinting with an eerie light, and there was an air of authority around them that sent a chill down his spine. But there was something else, something in the way they spoke about Lyra. It was as if they owned her. "Who are you?" Alex demanded, trying to steady his voice. "What do you want with her?" The armored beings stepped closer, their movements deliberate and calm. The leader, if there was one, stepped forward, its cloak swirling around its form like smoke. "We are the guardians of the feline empire," the figure intoned, its voice dripping with disdain. "Lyra is a member of our royal line. Her bond to you is ... unacceptable. You must release her. Now." Lyra's growl intensified, vibrating through the air, and Alex could feel the heat of her anger before it even reached his ears. Her body tensed, and for the first time, Alex saw something in her eyes, something fierce, something terrifying. She wasn't afraid. She was ready to fight. The Guardians didn't back down, but neither did Lyra. Her body pulsed with power, and Alex could feel it too. It was as though their bond was amplifying everything inside them, giving them strength. He could sense the energy flowing between them, a river of raw force. And he realized with a shock that she wasn't just a cat-like alien anymore. She was more than that. She was royalty, a being of incredible power, something far beyond his understanding. The leader of the Guardians extended a hand, as if to dismiss them, but Lyra's eyes flared with an intensity that stopped him in his tracks. You dare claim what is mine? Lyra's voice, though soft, carried a weight that made the very air tremble. I choose him. He is my mate, my equal. You cannot take that from me. The Guardians faltered. The air between them crackled with tension as they realized that Lyra had chosen a human. She had chosen Alex. Before they could react, Lyra's form seemed to shimmer, her fur glowing brightly like a radiant halo. She stepped forward, and with a flash of power, the ground beneath the Guardians' feet cracked open, sending them staggering backward. Alex watched in awe as the bond between him and Lyra surged, becoming something more than he ever could have imagined. The Guardians were not prepared for the force of Lyra's power. They had underestimated her. Underestimated them. For the first time, Alex understood just how deep this bond went. It wasn't just emotional or physical. It was a force of nature. And together, they were unstoppable. The Guardians hesitated, their cold, calculating expressions flickering with uncertainty. The silence that followed was heavy, charged with the unspoken understanding that things would never be the same. Leave now, Lyra's voice commanded again, this time with a finality that left no room for argument. For a long moment, the Guardians stood still, weighing their options. Then, one by one, they turned and disappeared into the shadows, leaving nothing behind but the sound of the wind in the canyon. Alex let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding, his heart still racing. He turned to Lyra, her golden eyes softer now, the glow dimming slightly. You were right, Alex said, his voice filled with awe. You're not just anyone, are you? Lyra looked at him, her expression unreadable for a moment. Then she purred, a soft, reassuring sound. No, Alex, I'm not. And just like that, he knew there was no turning back now. The galaxy had noticed them, and this bond they shared was far more than either of them could have imagined. The fight for survival. The night was quiet, the echoes of the Guardians' retreat still ringing in the air, but the silence was deceptive. Something had shifted, and Alex could feel it. Lyra's power hung thick in the air, a living force between them, but there was a new awareness in her gaze, one of both purpose and impending danger. She sat by the fire, her golden eyes glowing softly in the dark, her fur now flickering with a faint bioluminescence. Alex sat beside her, their hands nearly touching, but there was a distance between them that hadn't been there before. He could feel the weight of the galaxy pressing down on them, the magnitude of what they had just done, the act of defying an entire alien empire. Do you think they'll come back? Alex asked quietly, staring at the flickering flames. Lyra didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked out across the canyon, as if she could sense something even before he could. Her eyes narrowed, her muscles tensing as though she were preparing for a fight. Then, finally, she spoke in a voice barely above a whisper, yet it carried the weight of someone who had lived for centuries. They will return. It is inevitable. They will not rest until they've undone what we've done. Alex felt his stomach twist with anxiety. He had thought that their bond would protect them, that Lyra's power would shield them from whatever was out there. But now he understood the truth. Their enemies were vast, their power unimaginable. They were not just fighting for survival, they were fighting for their future. Suddenly, a sharp hiss cut through the air, breaking the stillness. Alex's heart skipped a beat as he whipped his head toward the source of the sound. The ground trembled slightly beneath them, and for a split second, the world seemed to shift. Lyra! He shouted, his voice rising with panic. She was already on her feet, her body coiled with tense energy, her tail flicking like a predator on the prowl. The air around them thickened, the familiar hum of Lyra's power filling the space as her body shimmered with radiant energy. "We are not alone," she growled, her voice filled with the certainty that came from years of survival. "They've come for us." The ground beneath them cracked, and the first of the invaders appeared silent, swift, and deadly. These weren't the Guardians. No, these were something far worse, sleek, shadowed forms that seemed to melt into the moon. Darkness itself. Their movements were unnatural, inhuman, their glowing red eyes piercing through the dark, like malevolent stars. Alex's pulse raced as he fumbled for his weapon. He didn't know what these creatures were, but one thing was clear: they were here to kill. Lyra wasted no time. Her body surged forward, glowing bright enough to light the entire canyon. The creatures lunged at her, their claws extended, but they were met with a force they weren't prepared for. Lyra slashed through them with the speed and precision of a deadly predator. Her fur flickered with blinding light, and each movement was followed by a crackle of raw power. Alex watched in awe and terror as Lyra fought. She moved like lightning, faster than he could track, her body seemingly in two places at once. She struck with fury, each blow a burst of energy that shattered the creatures around her. But they weren't giving up. More emerged from the shadows, their forms melding with the night. There were dozens now, each more terrifying than the last. They were relentless, closing in from all directions, and despite Lyra's power, Alex could see that she was being overwhelmed. A jagged piece of rock suddenly flew toward her, aiming directly at her chest. Alex's instincts kicked in. Without thinking, he dove forward, pushing her out of the way just in time. The rock scraped across his arm, tearing through the fabric of his suit, but he barely felt the pain. His focus was entirely on Lyra. "Get up," he shouted, grabbing her by the arm, pulling her back. "We have to keep moving." She blinked, momentarily disoriented, before her eyes sharpened with renewed focus. She turned toward him, her golden eyes flickering with a mix of gratitude and urgency. The bond between them surged again, stronger than before. "We need to fight back, together," she said, her voice full of conviction, as the creatures closed in on them. Alex's body seemed to hum with Lyra's power, feeding off of the bond they shared. His heart raced, but this time he didn't feel fear. There was something else: strength. The same strength he had felt when Lyra first touched him. "I'm with you," Alex said, his voice steady. He could feel the power inside him now, the energy that flowed through the bond. It wasn't just Lyra's, it was theirs. With one fluid motion, Alex raised his weapon, aiming it at the nearest creature. As he pulled the trigger, a burst of energy surged through the barrel, a beam of light that struck the creature square in the chest. It howled, stumbling backward, but the others kept coming. "Stay close to me," Lyra said, her voice low and commanding. Together, they fought human and alien, bound by a force neither could fully understand. Alex fired his weapon, while Lyra's claws slashed through the air with deadly precision. But as the battle raged on, they realized the truth. They weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for something bigger, something the galaxy wasn't ready to witness. The bond between them surged again, and this time it felt different. It wasn't just raw power. It was a shared purpose, a shared will to survive. They were no longer just two beings fighting side by side. They were a force, unstoppable and united. As the last of the creatures fell, the canyon fell silent. Alex's breath came in heavy gasps, and his body trembled with the adrenaline of the fight. But as he turned to Lyra, he saw something in her eyes that he hadn't expected: pride. "You were not meant to fight," she said softly, her voice filled with admiration. "But you fought like one of us." Alex smiled, his chest swelling with something he couldn't quite place gratitude, perhaps, or awe. "I'm not leaving you. Not ever." Lyra's golden eyes softened, and for a moment, a fierce warrior before him melted away, leaving only the quiet, glowing presence of the woman who had claimed him as her mate Dot and as the first light of dawn. Broke over the canyon. Alex knew this was only the beginning. Asterisk. A new future. The silence that followed the battle was almost unnatural, the air heavy with the aftermath of their fight. Alex's heart still raced, his breath shallow and rapid from the intensity of the skirmish. Lyra stood beside him, her body rippling with energy, her fur still glowing faintly in the dim light of the early morning. Her eyes, though tired, held a depth of understanding. She wasn't just an alien. She was something ancient, something beyond comprehension, and yet she had chosen him, chosen to share her power, her life, and her soul. Dot, as the last of the creatures retreated into the darkness, their eerie howls fading into the distance, Alex felt a shift in the air. It was as if the very fabric of the planet was breathing a sigh of relief. Lyra turned to him, her gaze softening. For the first time since they had met, Alex saw not just the fierce warrior, but the being who had borne the weight of countless centuries. "We've won," Alex said, though it felt more like an uncertain statement than a victory. Lyra nodded, her eyes glowing like twin stars. Yet there was a sadness behind them, a weariness that spoke of battles fought and lost long before Alex had arrived. She stepped forward, her movements graceful, despite the lingering tension in the air. "Yes," she said quietly, her voice carrying the weight of 1,000 years. "But the fight is not over. It will never be." Alex frowned, the weight of her words sinking in. "What do you mean?" Lyra paused, looking out across the landscape, as if seeing something beyond the horizon, something he couldn't grasp. "You have seen it, haven't you? The empire that calls itself the Guardians. They are but a small fraction of what is watching. We are not just two beings in a galaxy. We are the start of something far greater, something that will ripple through the stars." Alex felt a chill run through him at her words, but there was a sense of inevitability that hung in the air, like the calm before the storm. He had known they were running out of time, but now he understood that they were facing something that went far beyond them. The Guardians were just one faction. There were others who wouldn't hesitate to destroy everything in their path to stop this bond from flourishing. "What do we do now?" Alex asked, the weight of the galaxy pressing on his shoulders. He had never been a fighter. He was an explorer, a solitary wanderer in a vast universe. Now, though, he felt the shift. He was no longer just a man. He was part of something much bigger. Lyra turned to him, her expression softer now, almost tender. "Now we begin." The words held a promise, one that set something deep within Alex alight. He didn't know what that beginning looked like, but as Lyra's golden eyes met his, he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't alone. Together, they would face whatever came next, side by side. But as she spoke, Alex noticed something else, a flicker of uncertainty, the smallest crack in her otherwise resolute demeanor. It wasn't fear. Lyra was far beyond that. No, it was something else, something more profound. "We cannot do this alone," Lyra continued, her voice steady, yet tinged with something Alex couldn't quite place. "I will need more allies. There are others who can help us, beings like me, creatures of power who have been hidden from the world for too long." Alex raised an eyebrow, his curiosity piqued. "Who are these others?" "Shapeshifters, warriors of fire, ancient beings whose very existence is tied to the stars themselves," Lyra replied. "They will be drawn to our bond, to the force we've unleashed. But they won't come easily. We will have to prove that we are worth their loyalty." Alex looked at her, his heart heavy with the realization of just how much was at stake. "So we need to find them?" Lyra nodded, her gaze unwavering. Yes, but finding them will be the least of our challenges. The enemies we've already made will send more, and if we cannot rally others to our cause, the Empire will crush us before we have a chance to begin. The weight of her words hung in the air, and for a moment, Alex felt small. Just a human, caught up in something so much bigger than he had ever imagined. He was no longer just a witness to an alien world. He was a part of it, and his actions would shape its future. But even in the face of such uncertainty, a fire ignited within him. This bond, this connection with Lyra, it was more than just survival. It was a purpose, a mission. And for the first time since his arrival on Korath, Alex knew exactly what he had to do. "I'll help you," he said, his voice firm with determination. "We'll find them, and together we'll stop them." Lyra's golden eyes softened, and for the briefest of moments, Alex saw the depths of gratitude in them. She stepped closer, and this time her hand brushed against his, a soft, steady touch that sent a ripple of warmth through him. "You are already more than I could have hoped for," she said quietly, her voice almost a whisper. "And now we will change the galaxy together." As the first rays of dawn broke over the canyon, casting the sky in shades of red and gold, Alex stood beside Lyra, his heart swelling with a newfound strength. The galaxy had no idea what was coming, but Alex and Lyra did, and together they would shape the future. Asterisk.